Hello everyone, my name is Todd. I'm going to be your logic tutor today, and today we begin with some very simple proofs using the proper rules of replacement. Okay, and we'll start out very easy and work our way up into harder problems. So this problem right here, number one, we are to prove B, and we have 1 and 2 as premises, as noted by over here. So we have to prove that you can get from 1 and 2 to B. So the first thing that we would do is look over the premises to look for a B, and we see that there's a B in the consequent of line 1. Okay, so since this is a conditional, if we can find an A, then we know that we have a B by the rule modus ponens. And fortunately, there's an A on line 2, so this is just a one-step proof. We would say 3, B is true based on 1 and 2 and the rule modus ponens. And we're done. Okay, let's do another. Okay, this problem right here, 1 and 2 are premises, and we have to prove not C follows from 1 and 2. So the first thing that we do is we look for our target, not C, and we see it's in the consequent of a conditional, which means if we can find the antecedent, which happens to be not both A and B, then we could do a modus ponens to get the not C, and look right here, it's on line 2. And so this again is just a one-step proof, not C from 1 and 2, modus ponens. Okay, so what problems 1 and 3 are trying to get you to see is that modus ponens is this general argument form. If blah, then let's say ka-ching, and you have a blah, then you conclude ka-ching, whatever the blah and ka-ching happen to be. In this case, the blah happened to be not A and B, and the ka-ching, as it were, is the not C. We had an instance of the not A and B, and so we were able to conclude not C by modus ponens. All right, let's move on. Okay, this one, we're going to use a new rule that we haven't used yet. 1 and 2 are premises, as noted by the P's over here. We have to prove not B follows from 1 and 2. So the first thing that we should do is look for a not B. But we don't see a not B. So we might think that we're stuck. But when you can't find what you need, here's a tip. What you need to do is look for its opposite. So the opposite of not B would be B in the antecedent of a conditional. Well, why is that going to help us? Because if we can find the opposite of the consequent, then we can get a not B by modus tollens. Okay, so we can't find the not B, so let's look for a B and hope that it's in an antecedent. And there is a B in an antecedent. So we look over here, here's an A, and we need the opposite of an A to do the modus tollens, and guess what's on line 2? The opposite of the consequent, so we're able to do modus tollens and get not B, that's line 3, from 1 and 2 modus tollens. Let's do another. Here we go. This time we have to prove not A if and only if B. 1 and 2 are our premises. So the first thing we do is we look for not A if and only if B. But we don't see that, so as I've recommended, you should look for the opposite of what you're trying to prove. So that would be A if and only if B. in the antecedent of a conditional, and then you're going to look for the opposite of the consequent, and then you could do the modus tollens to get not A if and only if B. Okay, so let's see. Do we have the opposite of not A if and only if B? Yeah, we do. It's right in an antecedent like we wanted. So the consequent is not if C then D. So we need to find the opposite of that, which would just be C then D, which happens to be right here on line 2. So we have everything we need. So we get not A if and only if B from 1 and 2 by modus tollens. Okay, the important thing is not to write down or copy these, but to listen how I go about figuring out what to do. These are very simple problems, but they will get more and more complicated as we go. Number 9. Okay, we have to prove not C. We have 3 premises, and so first thing, let's look for a not C, and we don't see one. So we should look for its opposite in an antecedent. So we should look for C in a conditional, and then we're going to look for the opposite of the consequent if we can find that conditional. So there's the conditional I'm looking for, C then B. So I can get a not C out of line 3 if I can find a not B and do a modus tollens with it. So now my goal is to find a not B. And I notice there's a not B on line 1, but it's part of a conditional. It says if A, then not B. So in order to say not B, I need an A. So that's what I look for next. And here it is. There's an A on line 2. So I can get my not B, and then I can get my not C. Let's just follow our steps backwards. First things first, look at 1 and 2. If A, then not B. 2 says A, so on 4, we're going to get not B. That was from 1 and 2, modus ponens. Okay, why did we get the not B? Well, look at line 3. C, then B. We have the opposite of the consequent. We have a not B, which means we get the opposite of the antecedent, not C. That's 5. And that was from 3 and 4, modus tollens. And there you have it. Let's move on. 11. Okay, 1, 2, and 3 are premises. We have to prove not C or D. We look around at our premises and we don't see that anywhere. So again, we're going to use our first strategy, and that is look for the opposite of what we need to prove, which would be C or D in the antecedent of a conditional. Then we'd look for the opposite of the consequent, and that would give us exactly what we need by modus tollens. So let's see. Do we see C or D in an antecedent? We do, right here. So what we would need to do the modus tollens is a not A. I need a not A. I don't see a not A, so I'm going to look for its opposite A in an antecedent. And here it is on line 1. What do I need to get a not A out of 1? I would need the opposite of the consequent. In this case, the opposite of not B, which would be a B, and guess what? I have one right here on line 3, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. 1 and 3 get me not A, 1 and 3, modus tollens. Now, why did I get the not A? Because I needed it to use on line 2, and that gets me line 5, which is not C or D, from 2 and 4, modus tollens. And we're done. Let's move on to another one. Okay, this one, 13, is going to involve a new rule that we haven't used yet. But let's go through the same thought process we went through before. First things first, let's look for B then A. Do we see B then A? We don't see B then A anywhere in our premises. So the second thought would be look for its opposite, which would be not B then A, in the antecedent of a conditional, and then we could do our modus tollens trick if we have the right pieces. But we can't even find something like this. So what to do? Well, because the conclusion is a conditional, this is what I'm thinking. I'm going to look for a B then something and a something then A. So notice that the B is the antecedent and the A is the consequent. Why am I going to look for those two things? Because I can put those two together by hypothetical syllogism to get the conditional I want. Okay, so I can build the conditional. So do I have a B then blank? Well, I do. And what's in the blank? Not bracket C then D. Do I have a blank then A where these blanks match? And the answer is yes, it's right here. So all I need to do is this: B then A, 1, 2, by hypothetical syllogism. This strategy up here is hypothetical syllogism. And we are done. Okay. Stop right here, and we'll move on to